Excellent. Thank you, Miranda. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining me today. Miranda, I'll have you do it. You can you can hear me, right?
Yep, you are all good.
Yay, thank you. Like Miranda said, my name's Taylor, and I've actually been volunteering with Every Dog since March of this year. I help assist with Eric's classes on Thursdays. And when I asked Miranda how I could get more involved with the animal community in Austin, she actually suggested that I do a webinar for you guys on my experiences with animal training. I'll give just a little bit of my own background. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and prior to volunteering, I was a professional animal trainer for nearly 8 years, working with a ton of different species, primarily focusing on whales and dolphins. My personal experience is focused on the science of behavior and how to properly use positive reinforcement on an expert level, which is really cool. While I no longer train animals full time, I'm a self-proclaimed behavior nerd, and I love working with my dog at home, and I love connecting with people on how they can help their furry friends. I'm super happy to be doing this webinar today to give some experiences, tell you guys about some of the experiences that I've had in the animal care field and how, like I said, I relate that back to my own dog at home. All right, so providing well-rounded animal care is very important, both in zoos and at home. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the similarities between animal care in zoos and those with your pets. This webinar is based on my personal experiences. It definitely won't be a comprehensive overview of everything that zoos and aquariums do with their animals and everything that I do with my dog at home. I simply included some of my favorite experiences and some common practices that I've observed similarly between the two. This webinar is intended to inspire you and hopefully broaden your knowledge of animal care wherever you are in your pet journey. I'm excited to share some stories and ideas with you. I'll be the first to admit that I do a lot of work with my dog since it's definitely a passion of mine, but not every behavior, not every technique, idea that I share tonight is going to be right for you and your pet. But my hope is that, like I said, that you simply feel inspired and maybe have a little bit of fun too. All right, so these are some of the areas that we're going to cover today. These are some very important areas when it comes to a well-rounded animal management. We've got cooperative care, which is just anything that helps us take care of our animals, exercise, enrichment, learning, and then definitely relationship is in there too. As I mentioned earlier, there's so much more than what I'm going to cover tonight that goes into animal care, but we're going to go over some fun examples. So let's start with cooperative care. As I mentioned, that's anything that helps us care for our animals and make their healthcare a better experience for them. I've broken this section down a little bit into daily care, so things like body exams, teeth brushing, nail trimming, that might look familiar for some pet parents, and then also vet care. So in zoos and aquariums and also at home, we'll do body weights, body measurements, lab work, ultrasounds, x-rays, all that kind of fun stuff. So I have some photos. We're going to go through a few examples. So we'll start with body exams. So with managed animals, it's very important that we get a good look at their body every single day. And that's where training can come into play to help us look at that. So I have a few photos here that I'm going to pull up. And before I go any further, I do want to shout out, I actually reached out to some people on Instagram, and I asked them to share some photos with me. Landry Photography on Instagram is actually, he visits a lot of different zoos and aquariums around the US, and he shared some awesome photos that you guys get to see. If you guys like these photos, definitely check him out on Instagram because he has a lot of different photos that he posts. But he shared these with me to show you guys some body exams. So I actually have 3 different species here that are trained to open their mouth for examination. So you can see the sea lion, the killer whale, and the hippo. All of these animals are actually holding their mouths open for their trainer. That allows everyone to get a good look at their teeth, get a look at the back of their throat, get a look at their tongue. We can check it out every single day. We can take pictures. We can even show a vet. Up in the top right-hand corner, you can also see this sea lion is trained to present his flipper, and his trainer is actually manipulating it and maybe even feeling part of his skin as well. This is something that he's been desensitized to, and it allows us to take even better care of these animals when they're able to actively participate in their own body exams. And if they're not trained to do this, usually zookeepers just kind of have to try and find a way to look at those animals when they're walking by. These are some photos that I included. This is actually one of my first internships. I like to say that this is when I was a baby trainer. And I'm working with some of our brown bears. So this behavior that you see in the first two are actually, it's called Big Bear. And it's a really fun behavior to show guests, but it also gives us a good view of the underside of his belly. And then on the far right, you'll see me asking him to open his mouth, which is similar in those other photos that you saw before. When the bear is trained to open his mouth for us, it's really easy for us to see his teeth, see the back of his mouth. And then I do have a video. Some of the videos might be a little bit laggy, but you guys will get the idea. I actually visited the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo a couple years ago, and they showed me some of their cooperative care behaviors. This is their tiger. He actually gets up on his hind legs, and then she tells him good job right away, and he gets a nice little treat through the fence. We'll watch it again. And you can see, I actually am very impressed by that. I had no idea that he was going to be able to pop up so like that. So in this behavior, if he were to hold it for a little bit longer, which is something that his trainers can ask him to do, we could see the underside of his belly really, really easy, which would probably be impossible if he wasn't trained to do this. Now at home, there's a few of these that I've related into my own dog. So I have a standard poodle. So she's already desensitized to the grooming behaviors, including a high force dryer. In this first photo, you can actually see that I'm using the dryer to take a photo of some freckles that are on her stomach. So I actually noticed that some black dots, you guys can kind of see them in the middle there, showed up on her side a couple of months ago. So this is actually, I can use the dryer to do body exams, and she's trained to hold still while I not only use the dryer on her, but also take pictures. And then this second photo is also something very unique to my own dog. She actually has what we think is gingival hyperplasia. So she's got overgrowth of the gum in her mouth. We think it might be from some sort of past trauma. Believe it or not, the gap in between these two front teeth, there was not a tooth there. The gum has just simply grown in between them. The gum has been removed about a year and a half ago, but it actually has grown back. So this is something that I started doing about a year and a half ago when I noticed that the gum was growing abnormally. I started taking photos. So my dog is very used to me actually lifting up the gum here, and then taking a photo pretty much every single month, and my vet loves this. So this gives them a good idea. Right now, we're just monitoring it, but I can easily look back and be like, has it gotten worse? Has it gotten better? So this is a good example of how body exams help me at home. We can even go a little bit further, like I said, nail filing, teeth brushing. So additionally, not only is that sea lion trained to open his mouth, but he's also desensitized to take a toothbrush so that they can clean his teeth. You'll also see a giraffe here at the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo who is not only trained to approach this opening in the gate, but also trained to lift his foot onto this pedestal so that a vet or a keeper could view his foot or even work on it if need be. And then same with my dog at home, you can see that she is trained to present her paw so that we can file her nails. And since her teeth are definitely something that we're keeping an eye on, she's also trained to allow me to brush her teeth every single day. A couple of months ago, the vet asked me, do you think that you could floss those front teeth? And I was like, you know what? I think with all of the training that we've already done with her mouth, I think that she probably would. So we actually floss the teeth once a week too, which I don't think that would be possible if she wasn't used to me working around her mouth so often. Now, going beyond body exams and teeth brushing, nail trimming, we also can do further. We can get weights, we can do lab work, ultrasounds, x-rays. So for you and I, stepping on a scale might seem very easily, and for some animals, it might be as easy as using a perch that they're already familiar with and putting it on a scale. But with some animals, like the killer whales, it's not that simple. So a lot of people ask us how you weigh such a big animal, and we actually use the photo on the left here is a killer whale sized scale. Now, in order to get the whales up on that scale, we ask them to perform what's called a slide out behavior, which our three females were demonstrating in the photo on the right. Now you can see that this photo kind of looks like a photo opportunity. It looks like they're posing, but this pose actually holds a very important purpose to their health. When we ask them to slide out of the water like this, not only is their entire body out of the water, but we also ask them to lift up their tails. And if they were to perform this behavior on the scale, we'd actually be able to get an accurate weight. So it looks a little something like this. This is a good example. I do have a video. I apologize if it lags a little bit, but you guys will get the idea. This is us during a presentation. So I'm about to slide one of our largest killer whales out into the slide out. And during a presentation, not only does it give people an excellent look at his entire body, it allows them to take awesome pictures of him, but behind the scenes, it plays a very important purpose. Let's see here, there we go. So you can see that he slides all the way out, no problem. I actually take a break here, and since he did so good, I'm actually gonna give him a big salmon. They'll swallow that hole right in the slide out. And then, like I said, in order to get an accurate weight on Cayucit, we actually have to ask him to get his entire body out of the water. So he's gonna lift his tail. And if he were to be doing this behavior on the slide out, that would allow us to get an accurate weight. And this whale in particular is actually almost 10,000 pounds. So it's very important for him and the rest of his pod that we are able to weigh them every single day. Now, same thing with my dog. We actually kind of work on scales. This is her sitting nice and calmly on the scale at the vet. And we have a behavior at home called table, which we actually use in her agility that helps us to train this. So this is something we work on at home. So I'm going to have a little video here where she's actually practicing her scale. Wait. And this is something that we can do every single day. We can do it more often than we go to the vet. So when she goes to the vet, it's much more normal for her to sit on the scale and not only sit on it, but wait for us to get an accurate reading. So this is us practicing at home. Yeah. We make sure we keep it nice and fun. And after she waits, not only does she get lots of treats, but you'll see I'll call her down and we'll do some chin scratches as well. Yeah. Another really fun thing that we can do with training when it comes to caring for the animals is actually with the whales and dolphins, we're able to get blood samples from their tail. So this first photo is just the underside of a tail fluke of a killer whale, and I have the little blue arrow pointing at that white part of their fluke, and that's actually where we can collect a blood sample because the vein sits very close to the surface there. Now, how we get that sample is we actually ask the whales to perform what's called a fluke present, which I'm demonstrating in the top corner there. We have the whales turn over on their belly and lay their flukes on the side of the pool. From there, we can actually desensitize them to a small needle prick with our veterinarians that allows us to actually collect blood samples, either for routine physicals or if we'd like to check their levels. I also have a video of me doing this in a presentation. It's another great example how these behaviors serve a vital part of their healthcare, but we do them all day long. They're no big deal. We want to make sure that this is something that's really, really, really fun for them. So that on the rarer occasions when we have a vet come down and maybe take a look at their tail flukes, it's just another day. This is something that they do all the time. During this presentation, it gives everyone a great look at Kamea's underside, and it also allows for her and I to spend some time here just bonding, giving her a tail rub, and gets her used to being in that position for a long period of time if she were to need to be. And then one last thing about cooperative care is not only are we able to collect those samples, but we can go even further than that. Once the animals are trained to do different lineups, do different presents like this peck present, or bring this hippo bringing his head a little bit closer onto the ledge, we can go from there and actually get ultrasounds, x-rays. The top photo of that killer whale in a side lineup position is actually what the position that we use to ultrasound them. So if a whale or dolphin were to be pregnant, we could actually train them to get their belly up to the side of the pool and actually bring an ultrasound over and ultrasound the baby, which is really cool. And that's just something that you build up to over time. So in this position with the whale lined up, we could maybe start touching the side. We could maybe bring over different props that might look like the ultrasound machine and basically just teach them that it's no big deal. And you're probably just going to sit here for a couple of minutes, and that is going to be way less stressful for the animal when they're trained to hold still for these procedures. And it helps us take care of them much easier. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about exercise. Now, most animals in managed care, they can get exercise in a lot of different ways. Maybe it's exploring their habitat, maybe at home it's walks or exploring your backyard. One thing with the whales and dolphins is that we actually train them to do big, high energy behaviors, which once again, during presentations is a lot of fun for people to see, but behind the scenes, it serves a very important purpose. So that is actually a Pacific white-sided dolphin performing a front flip, and then I also have one of the killer whales jumping completely out of the water to touch this buoy. These are things that we can train them to do. They learn lots of different fun, high energy behaviors to keep their heart rate up, keep them in excellent physical condition. And you'll hear me say this so many times, the goal is to always make this super fun. So that buoy touch is actually one of their favorite ways to exercise. And then when it comes to our pets, I'm sure there's lots of different ways that you can think of, whether it's playing fetch. I have a dog who absolutely loves fetch. It's definitely one of the ways that we keep her exercised. I know a lot of dogs like to swim. And then where training can come into play is actually different dog sports. So we actually, this is a video of my dog doing lure coursing. It's one of her favorite ways to exercise. We trained her to follow, they actually call it a rabbit, but it's just a plastic bag. And it allows her to, in that smaller space, get a lot of different exercise, really burn some energy. And then once the dog goes around 3 times, they actually let her catch it, which keeps it fun, keeps it engaging. I actually don't really have to reinforce this that much because she finds it reinforcing on its own. So here she's going to catch it, and then I try and keep her from destroying it. Next up, this is definitely a very fun thing to talk about. And so far, I've definitely talked about how training can come into play when it comes to exercise, when it comes to caring for your pet or caring for another animal. Enrichment, a lot of the examples that I'm going to talk about for this presentation have to do with training. For enrichment, we'll move a little bit away from that. I want to cover a lot of fun examples. So some of the enrichment involves direct training, like maybe teaching an animal to play a game. Some of the enrichment involves indirect training, like maybe teaching an animal to shift off of its exhibit, so that you can set up enrichment. And some examples, like I said, are just for fun. So we'll start off with that. And this is one thing I always say is that ice blocks are a zookeeper's best friend. So here are some examples of how we can use different approved fruits and vegetables to enrich the animals in a different way. The porcupine there is enjoying her daily dose of vegetables in a frozen layered ice treat. We also have an elk in the middle who couldn't even wait for us to get the block out of the bin. She decided to taste it before the rest of the herd. And then there's also a gibbon there. We actually made these little ice blocks and tied them all over the side of the habitat so that she could enjoy them. And it was really easy for guests to see her as well. And then also a rhino there, he's enjoying his popsicle. And then one thing with the killer whales is that they loved ice. So we actually did a lot of ice enrichment with them. The top photos there is actually, if a killer whale is celebrating a birthday, they usually got what we would call a birthday cake, and it looked a lot like what you would see up there. Usually one of their toys covered in ice, and then all of the other colorful items that you see are actually gelatin, so it's unflavored, and then usually with some color added back in for fun. Gelatin either made in the fridge or in some cases frozen. The whales really like to chew on it. They like to spit it around. They like to share it with their friends. And then eventually it is okay if they were to eat it. All of these items are vet approved. Another really fun thing about the ice when we would give it to the killer whales is when they would swallow it, it actually adds to their hydration as well. So that's another way that we can keep them healthy. So you can see that we actually were getting ready to throw some ice in on the picture on the right, and the girls actually popped up. I'm sure you've probably taken photos of your pets waiting for their holiday treat. And then I have a fun story about the ice blocks on the bottom as well. And I like this example because it shows that enrichment does not have to cost money. I know that you will see out there, especially for dogs, expensive puzzle feeders, expensive toys, but I have I wanted to include a few examples in this presentation that do not cost money. So this is a fun example. I am originally from Minnesota, and I actually went home for Christmas a couple of years ago. And I noticed that my dad had made these ice blocks, but they were hollow in the middle, and he had filled them with Christmas lights. And I was like, that's really cool. I think the whales would enjoy that as well. So I took it back to work and I actually adapted it for the orcas. And what he did, so my dad invented this, and then we were actually able to use it for them as well. He would take a 5-gallon pail and he would fill it to the top with water, and then we would put it in the freezer. But in Minnesota, he would just set it outside for about a day. And what would happen is it would freeze at least 2 or 3 inches on either side. From there, he would bring it inside and he would chip a tiny hole in the top and dump out all of the water through that hole that hadn't frozen yet. And voila, you have a hollow ice block. So for him, he would fill his with Christmas lights. And for us, we actually would fill it with Jello, other pieces of ice. We could put fish and other pieces of edible enrichment that the orcas were approved to have by their veterinarian. So you can see some examples there. And then enrichment does not have to be edible. Things like exploring a new environment or even interacting with another animals of the same or different species can also be very enriching. So I have a few examples here. On the left, this giraffe is actually interacting with a lion for the first time, even though that lion is made out of paper mache. In the middle, we have an ambassador cheetah who is actually trained to go on these walks. It helps them get out of their environment, and it also helps them interact with their community. So we're taking her on a walk so that she can see different sights and sounds. In the top, we actually had another animal ambassador going on a walk through the park, and they stopped by to visit the killer whales. So we thought it would be fun if everyone met each other. Obviously, you can see that there's a glass pane in between the killer whale and the animal, but they're just looking at each other. And I'm also probably having the most fun in this photo, introducing them. And then a great example of you and your pets. This is a photo of me paddleboarding with my dog. This is something that completely blew her mind. She's out. There's different sights, smells, and sounds for her to interact with. And it's great enrichment to get her out of the house. We also have a lot of toys when working with the whales and dolphins. So this is just a few examples. Right in the middle there, you can actually see a photo of their toy chest, and it's filled with all kinds of toys. A lot of companies actually make toys for large animals that are made of high density plastic, extremely durable, things they can toss around. You'll see some orca-sized puzzle feeders in the back there as well. The orcas also loved what we would call strap toys. So you can see the yellow strap there is actually car tow strap. And we would lube it through other toys, and they like to tow them around. And then the beluga on the bottom actually has just a plastic planter that you would buy from Home Depot with, once again, the gelatin. Will make it in fun colors. I think that was a birthday cake that he decided to wear on his head. All right, so another great example, I have some examples here of some enrichment that I do with my dog. Enrichment is one of my favorite things whenever people come to me and talk to me about different behavioral issues that they may be having. I always say that a tired dog is a good dog, and that doesn't always mean physically. I have a very smart dog who loves enrichment. And this first photo is actually another example of how enrichment does not have to cost money. So I finished a tub of yogurt a few weeks ago, and instead of rinsing it out and throwing it away, I just threw some of her kibble in there and I shook it up. And then in the next photo, you can see that I just placed it in the freezer and I froze it overnight. And that's something that she can enjoy the next day for 15 or 20 minutes. And then I can go ahead and recycle it after that. The rest of the stuff around it is what my freezer looks like every single day. We love licky mats. If you are looking to spend money on enrichment, I love the topples that you can see in the middle there, the orange topples. We'll put all kinds of stuff on there, whether it's mashed banana, canned pumpkin, plain Greek yogurt. And in a pinch, I've even purchased single ingredient baby food, which I think you can also see in the photo, like green beans to smear on there, frozen blueberries. And whenever I feel as though my dog might need some mental stimulation, I can go ahead and grab a licky mat from the fridge. I also included a photo of some of her puzzle feeders. We do a lot of enrichment in this house, so usually she'll get her food in some kind of snuffle mat or puzzle toy. If you're in class with me, I love the wobble feeders. It's a really easy way for me to do nothing and for her to at least be busy for about 20 to 30 minutes. And then I also have some videos. It's just a compilation of some enrichment in zoos and aquariums, and then also a video of my own dog. This first video, we have powerful sprayers that the whales like to use to massage their body. You can see that 2R here has actually figured out how to get his tail flukes in there. And then in the next video is in a different pool. This whale is using it to massage her peck. And this is just something that we can leave on while we're not interacting with them, and they can use at their leisure. In our front pool, we also installed bubbles in the drain, and this is actually one of the first times that the whales are interacting with the bubbles. You can see he's checking it out. He's not quite sure. And then he decides to be brave and put his whole body in it. And then I think what happened here is he saw that I was filming, and just like your pets, once they realize that you're filming, they decide to come over and check you out instead. We also can give them those toys. So this is a good example of some extra large buoys that the killer whales can play with. They like to bop them around or even surf on top of them. Now this is an example with some beluga whales. These buoys are buoys that they can play with, just like the killer whales will. They can throw them around, or we can create a more unique enrichment item by tethering it to a different part of their environment and letting him jump and push it around. And as I mentioned earlier, this also is great exercise for them as well. So that's kind of a twofold behavior there. Another example of an orchid toy, this is actually fire hose that most of the time is donated from a local firehouse. And we can strap it together, and they like to try and share it with us. We also can do sound enrichment. So we actually had some trainers who play the violin. They stopped by last Christmas. And a fun thing about this video is that you can actually see the whales are bobbing their heads out of the water to get their ears up and out of the water so that they can hear a little bit better. Another great example of how enrichment can be free. This is a macaw enjoying some toilet paper roll that we used, once again, unflavored gelatin to glue some sunflower seeds to. This video got a little cut off, but it's just gelatin that we stuck to the inside of the glass. And then he actually uses a natural behavior to get it off. And then there's that planter again. Once all the jello is gone, they like to push it around underwater. I also have some examples of my own dog. Like I said, we do a lot of enrichment here, and most of the time we'll put kibble into a snuffle mat or a puzzle feeder, and that just extends the amount of time that it takes her to eat it. We love this snuffle mat. It's super easy. We put it in the washing machine once a month. This is also another one that we got on Amazon. She figures this one out pretty fast, but it still works in a pinch. She kind of has to push it around to get the kibble to come out. And then another great example, enrichment does not have to cost money. This is a cloth Urban Outfitters bag that I've actually had for years, and I decided to put all of her kibble in there and see if she could figure out how to shake the bag so that the kibble can come out. In the beginning of this, you can actually see I'm actually tossing kibble on top of it to continue to encourage her to investigate the bag so that more kibble comes out. This actually took her almost 45 minutes to get the kibble out, which I was very happy with. My dog is also very ball motivated. So this is a rainy morning where she wasn't going to get a walk. I just threw all of our bedding into a pile in my living room, and I just repeatedly hide her ball in there. And it's something that keeps her busy for quite a while. Another example of just exploring different parts of your environment. She gets to take in the sights and smells and sounds of PetSmart. This next video, believe it or not, is Zilker 2 years ago. So she's been to Zilker many times, but that day it looked a little different. And then here's us at Puptopia when it came to Austin last year. All right, so another excellent way that we can use training is through learning sessions. And Learning, a really fun thing about learning is that not only does the animal learn a new behavior, like maybe one of the exercise behaviors that we already talked about, maybe an enrichment game, or maybe a cooperative care behavior, but the learning process in itself can actually be very enriching as well. So sometimes it's just as much about the journey as it is about the completion of the behavior. Before we talk about learning, we're going to do some learning. I kind of wanted to go over some different vocabulary words so that you can be thinking like a pro as I break down some learning examples in the next few slides. So we'll start with bridge or marker. I included both of those just because I typically call it a bridge, but I know that in dog training, a lot of people call it a marker. It's just an animal training tool that relies on marking desirable behavior. So if you've taken a class with every dog, you've probably seen the clicker, or I've also included a photo there of my whistle bridge. That's what we used with the cetaceans. We actually called it a bridge because we like to describe it as something that bridges the gap between the exact moment that you're trying to capture with a behavior and reinforcement. So bridges that window of time. It says yes. And then once the animal comes back to you, or once you have a chance to grab a treat, the reinforcement comes then. So the marker is just a tool used to pinpoint that exact behavior that you're looking for. Successive approximation. And I also put in here, it's just a big word for baby steps. So the training process is really about taking teeny tiny baby steps in order to get from point A to point B. That's a process of reinforcing steps of desirable behaviors with the goal of eventually getting to that target behavior. So with the weight example, with my dog that I talked about earlier, if I want her to calmly sit on the scale at the vet, I'm probably not going to start training that at the vet, and I'm probably not going to start, especially in the environment, because it's going to be a little bit different than at home. That's something that I'll probably start working on at home. And then you can see here, I moved it to my yard. And then once she has a lot of practice with that, we'll actually start working on it at the vet. So that's just a successive approximation, a very tiny baby step to get from her doing it in the house to her doing it at the vet and not going starting at the end. Target training. In dog training, you see this a lot. That behavior called touch. A lot of people will use the touch behavior to do target training with their dog. It's just a training concept which teaches an animal to touch a target like a hand or a stick with a part of their body. In zoos and aquariums, you'll often see what's called a target pole. And that is simply just an extension of our hand. So a lot of animals will learn to touch the tip of their nose or maybe their part of their face to our hand. And then we'll actually use a target pole, which is usually a stick with a buoy at the end, as an extension. So right here, this trainer might not be able to reach this hippo, but with the use of this target pole, she's able to have the hippo lay his head up there, and she could probably even move it around, and the hippo could move his head. Maybe she could be able to see the underside of his chin, the other side of his face. So it's just a really good tool when it comes to training new behaviors. And then I also wanted to talk a little bit about primary and secondary reinforcement. So it may seem simple, but primary reinforcement is a stimulus that reinforces behavior because it satiates an individual's basic survival needs. That basically just usually means food. So all animals need food to survive. So a primary reinforcer, especially in dogs, is going to be treats. This is my treat pouch that I use with my dog when I'm training, and anytime I'm out of the house, I do not leave without it. That is her primary reinforcement that we are going to use to train with her. And then I also wanted to talk about secondary reinforcement because it can often be just as reinforcing as food. So that's a stimulus that reinforces a behavior after it has been associated with a primary reinforcer. So this are going to be things like maybe a chin scratch or your dog's favorite toy. Let's say when you first got your dog, they might not have found, chin scratches to be very reinforcing, or they might not have had a favorite toy, but over time, they'll learn to associate those things with positive reinforcement. So we call that a secondary reinforcer. So it's good to have an idea that there are multiple different ways you can reinforce your animal using both primary and secondary. I included a really fun example of a killer whale here actually interacting with a marshmallow. Once again, this is something that if he were to swallow it, he is approved to have it. But as a secondary reinforcement, he's actually been trained to play a game where he'll toss it back and forth. And we've played this game so much. I have a strong reinforcement history of playing this game with him that he actually associates it as a reward. That's something fun for him to do after he completes a behavior correctly. These whales eat a lot of fish all day long, so we like to also reinforce them with other fun ways. And I do this same thing with my dog. I actually took an agility class with every dog, and I always use treats. And then one time I decided that I would see if my dog would participate in the session with just her ball, and it was a huge hit. She actually really loved that. So that was a good example too of it almost being more reinforcing than food for me to bring that ball to class. So we're going to talk a little bit about learning. I couldn't talk about learning without putting this adorable picture of my own dog after she graduated Agility 1. I always like to find different ways for my dog to learn new behaviors, and I've actually taken the scent class and agility with every dog, and that just helps my dog learn even more things out of her house. And for this learning section, I actually am going to break down 2 different behaviors with 2 different species that are very, very different. So I'll kind of give basically a behavior breakdown of how I am in the process of training my dog at home to use a nail file scratch board, and the process of training a killer whale to do one of those high energy exercise behaviors that we call a vertical spin. So we'll start with the scratch board. So most of you have probably seen these online. I actually have a wavy one that I bought on Amazon. You can simply make your own. And these are some things to consider when I first started teaching my dog this scratch behavior. So some important things are behaviors that Gemma already knows, which is a paw behavior, which is her shake behavior, where she places her paw in my hand. She already knows a sit, which enables her to sit right in front of the board. I wanted her sitting because I like the angle of her paw a little better. And she already knows her marker word, which is good. The goal for this is to improve Gemma's experience with nail trims. So this is a great example of a husbandry behavior. Gemma does not like her nails being trimmed. She does not like anyone going near her nails. So I wanted to try and find a way to make this experience more positive for her. So I'm attempting to train this board. And so the goal of these sessions is to not only for her to learn something new, but for her experience with nail trims to improve. The approximations that I'm taking are to mark and reward paw attempts where her nails come into contact with sandpaper. So I started this behavior by asking for her to give me her paw. And then every single time she would do that behavior and her nails would come into contact with the sandpaper, I would say good, which tells her that's exactly what I'm looking for. Now with Gemma, some of the challenges with this behavior was that she wanted to put her paw on top of something. So I did not anticipate that using this paw behavior was going to confuse her, because typically when I ask for paw, she puts her paw on top of my hand. So I had a lot of error in her wanting to put her paw on top of the board. Another challenge was high amounts of sampling. So sampling is when you are teaching an animal something new and they're just trying everything. So you may have seen this in your own pet. I was asking Gemma for paw, and if she was incorrect, if her paw went on top or maybe she missed the board, she thought that she was completely wrong, and she would start barking, she would start spinning, she would start laying down. I think I even had her play dead in front of the board a few times. That was just her being like, I will find out what you're looking for. I'm going to sample every other behavior I have in front of this scratch board. So we had to show her that it was much simpler than she thought it was. And then another thing I noticed with this behavior is that she seemed to have low motivation to continue after failure. We'll see that that's not uncommon, and it's not really that big of a deal for her. This behavior is for her. So even though she was failing, the way I combated that was just by keeping her sessions short and sweet. Some behaviors with my dog, I can work for 10, 15 minutes. And with this one, I work it for probably under 60 seconds, because that's about how long her motivation is with this behavior. So I do have some videos you can see. This is actually from my very first session with her, which was September 26th. And then I took my most recent session, which was just a couple of days ago. So you can kind of see where we are now. In this first session, you'll see that I'm using the word paw, because that was the word that I decided to try and get her to scratch the board. And in her second, she does it pretty good the first time, but then in the second one, she gets hung up because she wants to put her paw on top of something. And I don't tell her no, I don't scold her in any way. This is something that she's never seen before. So we just moved past it. And I, after this, just continued to reinforce her nails for touching the board.
Okay, sit. Oh, good girl. Oh. Oh. Okay, thank you. You can pop.
And then the second video, you can see a little bit of improvement. She only puts her paw on top of it once. And right after she puts her paw on top of it, I don't bridge or mark or anything. I just ignore it. And then she does get it right after that.
Scratch. Good girl.
And the goal here is to mark and reward the
Good.
really, really strong ones, the ones that she's putting some force into.
Scratch. 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 Good girl. Scratch. Good.
Failure and then a success there.
Good.
I hesitated, but I wanted to feed that success after the
Good.
failure. And then that's about as long as her sessions are now. Like I said, I keep them very short. She had a lot of success in that session. I could probably come back in 5-10 minutes, but she showed me over the last few months that this wasn't a behavior that she wanted to continue to do for a very long time. So I'm hoping that in the future that can improve her relationship with myself and the vet and the groomer, and allow us to trim her nails in a much easier way. Now we're going to move on to the training process in a killer whale. Like I said, this is a completely different behavior. We had a cooperative care behavior in a pet, and then I actually have the opportunity to help train a high energy aerial with a killer whale, which once again, not only enables him to learn more behaviors, but also gives him additional exercise behaviors. So since most people probably don't know what a vertical spin is, I'm going to play a short video now so you can get an idea of what the behavior looks like when it's finished. There are 2 whales in this video, but we're just going to be focusing on the one in the further away from us, but you can get an idea of what it looks like. So the criteria for the behavior is that they need to come up and out of the water and do 1 full rotation. As I mentioned, it's called a vertical spin. So we're going to break this down the same way that we broke down the scratch behavior. And that first includes behaviors that Tuar already knows. So he knows a target touch. We talked about target pulls earlier. Tuar already knows before we started training this behavior that in the presence of a target pull, in the presence of that small buoy, he knows to touch the tip of his rostrum to that buoy, and that'll help us in the training process. He also knows that a tap on the water with that target pull means that that is where he is supposed to jump. And beyond that, he knows that in order for us to fade that target pull for positioning, he knows that an ice cube thrown in the water also knows that, also tells him where he is to jump. Tuar also already knows a spin behavior. So usually the spin behavior is just right in front of us with just his head out of the water. That behavior he already knows, but we just wanted him to do it a little bit higher. Tuar also already knew remote behaviors, which means that someone sends him from one area of the pool and he is to perform the behavior in another end of the pool. So in all of these videos that I'm going to show, I'm showing him how to do the behavior in the area of the pool that we want him to do it, but someone else is actually asking him for the behavior, and when it's complete, actually he's going back to them for reinforcement. And just like Gemma, Tuar already knows his bridges or his markers. For him, it's the whistle that you'll see in my mouth, and we also have an underwater tone system that we can tell them good job with as well. The goal of this behavior is to enrich Tuar with opportunities to learn and also add behaviors to his repertoire. Like I said, especially his exercise repertoire. But this one is definitely a lot, it's definitely an enriching process for him to learn something new. So that was almost more important. The approximations that we took were to mark and reward a controlled spin behavior that come out of the water with a little bit of momentum so that he can at least get his belly button out of the water. And the challenges that he had with this were learning to do 2 things at once. So he can come out of the water and he can spin, but learning to do those 2 things at the same time were the main challenge that we had with this. I broke these videos down into two different videos. This first video are some of the first approximations that we took for 2R's vertical spin. In the first attempt that you're going to see, 2R touches his nose to the tip of the target pole, which step one, get him out of the water, success. In the second approximation that you'll see, I actually move the target pole in a circle to try and get him to spin while he's coming out of the water. So spin while coming out of the water. Step two, complete. And then in the third attempt, you'll see that I've moved the target pole a little bit higher, and that tells him that we're wanting him to do that behavior with a little bit more momentum and come a little bit more out of the water. So in that third approximation, I'll move the target pole higher, and he's going to do that spin with more momentum. And then in the fourth approximation, I'm going to add a tap on the water, which later on is going to help 2R distinguish where he's going to do that behavior in the pool. So right now, he knows it's supposed to be right in front of me, but in the future, I could move that tap further out, and that would help him shift the behavior from right in front of me to a little bit further out into the pool. So in that fourth attempt, you're just going to see me add a tap on the water, and that'll help him later on. These are all things that he's familiar with, but it helps us train the process. So first attempt. You hear my bridge there, good job. Second attempt, I'm gonna see if he can spin. Bit of a spin. This is a few attempts later, we're gonna raise the target pole, see if he can spin while coming out. Very nice. Fourth attempt, add that tap. Spin the pool. Excellent job. And you'll hear me blow that whistle. That just tells 2R that he's done a good job and he can return to the other trainer that sent him for some reinforcement. Now, this next video are approximations that are way later on. In fact, I think this could even be a year later. We have we have done different approximations since then. And we have 3 more approximations in this video. In the first one, you're going to see what's called a tap and pull. So earlier I mentioned that tap is to tell 2R exactly where in the pool that he's going to do this behavior. And then he actually no longer needs me to hold the pole above his rostrum. I'm actually able to remove it from the situation, and he already knows that he is supposed to spin. You'll probably see me move my arms around. That's just in case he looks at me, but I really don't think he needs it. The second approximation that you're going to see is the exact same thing, just a different angle. I tap to tell him where he wants to do the behavior, and then I get the pole out of the way to see if he can do it on his own. He does, it's great. And then that third approximation, we fade the tap with an ice cube. So the ice cube also tells him where he's supposed to jump, but it's just a little bit of a smaller prompt. And then over time, when this behavior is finished, the ice cube can get smaller and smaller and smaller. And the hope is that he'll eventually only need the signal from his trainer to learn this behavior. So the tap and pull. Very nice. And then second, tap and pull, that tells him where to jump. And we've got to trust that he knows what he's doing. The whistle. And then last approximate, replace that tap with an ice cube. And that is what the final vertical spin looks like. So that gives you an idea of how, if you remember that first approximation that I showed you was just 2R coming out of the water and touching the target pole. Second approximation, 2R coming out of the water and spinning a little bit while he touches the target pole. And then over time, we can raise it. And over time, we can actually, what we call fade those prompts, fade those helping tools, so that 2R, the only information that he needs to do this behavior is the hand signal that his trainer gives him. All right, the last thing I want to talk about that training can help when it comes to animal management is relationship. I don't really have a ton to talk about. I do just like to say that at the end of the day, all of this is possible based on relationship. I always have people ask me, what should I be prioritizing with my dog when I get a new dog or I get a new puppy? And I always say relationship. I work with my dog every single day, and when I worked in the animal field, I worked with those animals every single day. In fact, this top photo, I wanted to include it, even though it's a little blurry. We had a macaw that came in, and he couldn't sit on our arm. He wouldn't come out of his habitat, and I would go in every single day and just sit on the floor, and eventually he would crawl down and hang out with me. And over time, I built up his trust, and then that actually enabled me to go on to train husbandry behaviors, exercise behaviors, teach him new things, but in the beginning, it started with relationship. And that is the conclusion. Thanks, everyone.
That was so many cute things. That was delightful. If anybody has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box now. I have a lot of questions. Most of them are about individual animals, like who is your favorite beluga? These are the things happening in my head. But thank you so much to Tayler for all of this. Again, I think these are some really kind of universal things for all of us to think about with our pets, which is why I thought this would be a fun opportunity. It seems way cooler to like train a giraffe to put its paw up on something than it does to do it with my dog.
I
So
agree.
yeah, it just seems way cooler. But yeah, thank you so much for this, and thank you so much for all of the great advice. I am looking forward to putting this up and having more people get a chance to see it. If anyone has questions and wants to learn more from Tayler, let us know and we can get you in contact. And if you want to do some dog training and do some different things, feel free to let us know. Again, thanks to everyone who donated to make this webinar possible. If you haven't yet, but you loved what you heard and you want to donate, you can do that at everydogaustin.org. Yeah, and if we're seeing you in classes and things like that, we will see you soon. And thank you so much, Tayler. Have a good night.
Thanks, Miranda. Bye, everyone.
Bye.